The Madman Under the Bed. This is the story of a young girl from Dehradun called Sarah. As a child, Sarah was afraid of the dark and got a dog to keep her company. Subsequently, she slept peacefully, knowing the dog was under her bed. If she was afraid, she only had to reach out her hand, and her dog would start licking it until she fell asleep. Years went by like this, and Sarah grew up, and the dog became old. One night on the radio, she heard that a dangerous murderer was thought to be in the vicinity of the town. With her dog at her side, Sarah was not afraid. She got into bed, stretched out her hand, and the dog, as it would, began to lick her. She slept soundly, and when she woke up, she was surprised that the dog was still licking. Looking under the bed, she screamed. The dog lay dead, and the tongue that was so tirelessly licking her belonged to a man. Have you been up to check the kids? A teenage girl was asked to babysit for a family that lived in a huge, luxurious house. It was her first evening on the job, and after she put the children to bed upstairs, she sat down in front of the TV. But no sooner had she settled down before the phone began to ring. The caller was a man, gasping and laughing menacingly. He asked, "Have you been up to check the children?" The babysitter hung up, convinced that her friends were playing a joke on her. But the man called again, and again he asked, "Have you been up to check the children?" Again, she hung up, now frightened, but the man called a third time. This time he said, "I've taken care of the kids. Now I'm coming for you." By now, the babysitter was truly terrified. She called the police and reported the calls. The police told her to try to distract the man the next time he phoned to give them time to retrace the call. As expected, the man called back. The babysitter begged him to leave her alone, thus keeping him on the line for longer. Eventually, he hung up. Immediately, the phone rang again. This time, it was the police. "Leave the house fast. The calls are coming from upstairs." Come play with me. Some time ago, a friend of mine and I decided to try the Ouija board for the first time, something we had never dared to do before. We called 2 other friends to come and do it with us, as I had been told that it was more likely something would happen if there were more people. We had a hard time convincing the other 2, but in the end, they agreed to come along. We got everything ready, and feeling a bit nervous, got started. During the session, one of the girls we had called to join us said, "This is nonsense. I'm out of here." We got a little scared and decided to leave it for another time. After a few days, the girl who had left called me, beside herself. She said that as she was passing a derelict house near her home on the way back from the local library, a little girl dressed in white had asked to play with her. My friend told her that she couldn't, as she was in a hurry to get home, and immediately the girl began to cry, tears of blood. My friend fled, and when she got home, she called me. At first, I thought she was pulling my leg, but something told me that was not the case. I began to think about the day we had done the Ouija board and how abrupt my friend had been when she had got up to leave. I didn't give it much more thought and went to bed. The next day, my friend called me because she was going to be home alone studying, and she was scared. She asked me to keep her company. I took a bus over to hers, and we settled down with our books. After a while, we heard a scratching noise behind us. We both looked up and were horrified to find that the girl she had described to me was sitting on my friend's bed, scratching the wall. We ran out of the room, and when we got to the front door, I noticed that my friend was not there, but I was so terrified I couldn't make myself wait for her. Shortly afterwards, the police called my house to tell me that my friend had died of an asthma attack. She had been found on the stairs of her house with a terrified expression on her face. For several months after that, I was in treatment. I am now recovering, but the other day a note appeared in my mailbox written in a little girl's handwriting that read, "Your friend died because she wouldn't play with me. I have a new doll." I think it's a joke since our story has become famous in our town, but on the other hand, I'm scared. I wonder, will she come for me? Hotel de Venus, Debrecen. Hungary is a great country, but most folks only know it from Budapest. While Debrecen is the second largest city in Hungary, few have ever heard of it and even less have ever been there. Debrecen is on the far eastern side of the country, and to get here you typically fly into Budapest and either take a limo or train 3 hours across the entire country. Debrecen is a rather quiet city with a university and a few manufacturing sites nearby. I happen to work for a company that owns a facility here in Debrecen, so I come here on annual business trips. Each time I've stayed at that Hotel de Venice, which is about a total of 15 trips. While I do not always have experiences here, I have had a few, and it's well known within my company that the hotel is haunted. Most of the stories originate from the 5th floor, and it is interesting to note that I no longer see any occupied rooms on the 5th floor when I visit. There is no light coming from the windows, and the hallways are always black. While I have never stayed on the 5th floor, I have had 3 distinct experiences on the 2nd floor. The first was a few years back and occurred in the very room I am typing this story from right now. By the way, I have been in this room for 4 nights and nothing weird so far. My first experience was pretty awesome. To set the stage, I arrived in October, which is the same as this trip, and the room was hot. In fact, this is my biggest complaint about this hotel. It is hot and the air conditioner never functions. To compensate, you have to open the windows, but at night it gets really cold, so you end up either freezing or sweating. The choice is yours. Another thing that can be annoying is that they burn the fields here, so sometimes you have pervasive smoke to deal with as well. So here I am, trying to get to sleep, and I have the window open. It gets too cold for comfort, so I close the window, and the temp quickly climbs to close to 80 degrees. To help, I strip down naked, and I'm now lying face down on my bed. The hotel uses duvets even in the summer, which are hot and heavy. I have my duvet hanging out at my knees so I can try to stay cool, yet have the duvet handy just in case. As I lie there trying to get to sleep, yet still wide awake, the duvet is pulling up over my backside and comes to rest in the middle of my back. Folks, the windows are closed, the AC fan is a joke, and the duvet is heavy. You tell me what just happened, because I sure as hell can't figure it out. Now I am totally awake, but it takes a lot to get me rattled, so I just laid there with my senses heightened, waiting for something else to happen. But it never did. So within a few minutes, I fall asleep and never get bothered again on that trip. A few years later, and I am on the 2nd floor, but in a different room. Yep, still hot as hell inside and cold outside. I am lying in my bed trying to fall asleep when I hear a male voice, clear as day, saying something to me in a low voice, in words I could not comprehend. Could these have been voices from the hall? I seriously doubt it, because it sounded like whoever said it was lying right next to me and said it within inches of my right ear. Again, I don't scare easy, so my first reaction was to say, "What?" Nothing else happened and I fell asleep. Then just last year I was on the 2nd floor, but at this time I was all the way down at the end of the hall. I think it was room 202 or something. I have been there for several days with nothing occurring, but I did notice that I was the only person this far down the hallway. Anyway, it is my last night there before heading back to the States. My limo is going to pick me up at 3 a.m. so that I can catch the 7:30 flight. I am fast asleep when all of a sudden the fire alarm goes off. Not the smoke detector in my room, the fire alarm in the hallway, which is loud as hell. I have been in a hotel fire before, so I know that this is nothing to ignore. I whip the covers off of me, and as soon as my feet hit the floor, the alarm stops. I wait there for a few moments just to make sure nothing else is going on, and after it stays quiet for a while, I go back to bed. Just as I fall asleep, the alarm goes off again, and just like before, as soon as my feet hit the floor, it stops. Now I'm annoyed. I try to go back to sleep, but this time it takes a while, but when I do, the alarm goes off for a 3rd time. This time, I said, "Go to hell!" and lie there in my bed. Not only did the alarm continue, but this time I also hear the air handlers kick in. You know that sound, not the AC fan. So I pull off the covers and put my feet on the floor, and it keeps going. I turn on the lights, walk to the door to the room, turn the knob, and just as I open the door, the alarm and air handlers are shut off. I turn to my right, and a dark shadow of a woman walking towards me, but without my glasses, I don't know what I'm looking at. All I know is that I'm standing in the doorway, half naked, and I have not had a noticeable physique for many years. Back in the room I go, but now I'm so pissed off, there's no way I'm going to go back to sleep. So I showered, got dressed, and watched TV until my limo showed up. When I went to the front desk to check out, I asked them what happened, and the gal just sort of shrugged her shoulders. I asked her if that was the hotel fire alarm, and she said, yes. I then asked if they all went off, and she said no, just the one at your room. I then asked why she didn't come down the first time, and she said, I don't like to walk down there at night. I have 3 more nights to go, and I always wonder what might happen next. Now, as I have said, it is well known in my company that this hotel is haunted. Let me tell you a quick summary of what happened to a coworker of mine. This is too much for me. My coworker had to be here for an extended period of about 5 weeks, and they put him on the 5th floor. He had 3 separate experiences during the time that I know of. First was when he had just moved in. He unpacked all of his suitcases and put it in the bureau. He also placed his cases in there as well. He went to work, and when he returned, he opened the door to his room. All of his clothes were lying on the carpet. His sweets were also out and opened up. He went to the manager, and they said that there was no one in the room that day. Several days later, he returned from work, and when he opened the door, his furniture was in disarray. Chairs, desks, nightstands had all been moved around. After a few more days, he returned from work and found 2 dead birds lying on the floor with their heads twisted. Of course, the windows were shut, just as he had left them. That night, he said cleansing prayers and tried to talk with the spirit. He said something like, I know you are here. I mean you no harm. Please leave me in peace, and I will leave you in peace. Yada, yada, yada. Nothing else happened for the rest of his trip. Cool place, huh?